welcome, and we're very thrilled that you're here to fall in love with winter for us. Despite our best efforts, we're sorry that we couldn't arrange snow to just make it a little more thematic, but we're here to share what we learned during a very comprehensive process that looked at establishing a winter city strategy for the City of Edmonton. So some of the things we've learned is even though winter's a very significant part of the task that we're looking at, and it's involved in many changing cultures in some ways, we really needed to look at the way people view winter, and we needed to look at the way people viewed winter from an economic reality, from a planning reality, from basic lifestyle. We learned that winter is more about attitude than latitude, and that we're not as limited by winter as we might think. And really, in order to prove this, we couldn't just be a team with pom-poms saying, yes, love winter, let it snow. But we had to have some planning chops. And so we really stood on the shoulder of giants, those people that went before us loving winter, people that you've probably heard of and studied: Peter Kagayama, Jan Gal, Lars Gemzoe, local architects, local artists. And most importantly, we were championed by a city councillor who made this his project. And so we really used a shared leadership model led by the city councillor, and it webbed in and out depending on what our goal was.
When a lot of people think that the Winter City Initiative was about events, that it's the festival project or something, and this is something that we're still probably myth-we're busting. But events really are the tip of the iceberg, and this initiative went much deeper than that. We looked at patterns, waiting for a bus in wintertime, what it's like to transfer, how this comes together, and how it affects your desire to take the bus next time or ride your bike, winter commuting next time on a bicycle. And then under that, we looked at the systems, the infrastructure, the bylaws, development regulations, all of the stuff underneath that comes together, budgets, operating and capital, how it all comes together. And at the bottom of it all, what are the underlying stories we tell ourselves about what it's like to live in a winter city? Do you apologize for the weather? Or do you think all constantly about getting away? So it's about what's at the bottom, and we wanted to get right down to those underlying stories and change those dynamics all the way through the iceberg. And if you are going to go right down to the mental models, it's a lot about engagement. You can't do that sitting alone in a boardroom, even just us alone. It's about talking to the community and engaging. Otherwise, you're not going to have that transformational change, cultural change.
So when we started this event, we decided to create a think tank. And the think tank was made up of experts from all across the city. Some were architects, some were planners. We had a risk assessment expert, we had festival leaders, we had community leaders, and it was all championed by our city councillor, Ben Henderson. And it's really important because this was a true shared leadership model. So that, of course, was when we were putting the final touches on the strategy in July. So we were trying to make it feel like winter. We divided when we decided to look at the strategy, we knew that we just couldn't look at activity. So we had 4 hubs that we looked at that guided the strategy. And each of these hubs had people assigned to them, working on them, investigating them, researching them, so that we could get a full view. We also had extensive consultation. We talked to over 700 people about each of these areas. So we went to the UDI and talked to them. We went to planning groups. We went to people involved in providing social services to look at what winter was like for the vulnerable. So we took a very broad look at it. When we looked at urban design, for example, and that's the area we're going to be focusing on today, we used the framework that Jan Gal provided, who talked about, very much like the table at the back did, public life. How do we make public life better? And then in turn, how does that influence our public spaces, and next our buildings? And so we had a great team working on that. The next area we looked at was hospitality and tourism, much like you were saying at the table at the back. How can we make this province of ours, beyond the beautiful locations we're in, a tourism mecca? How can we help that? What is the plus for the hospitality industry? One of our recommendations is now that we're having winter city patios, and we're just initiating a winter drink contest. And so in the winter, the food and beverage people have all gathered together, and we're having a winter drink contest. And certainly business, there's some real business opportunities, whether it's winter fashion, whether it's snow weather, cold weather construction, all sorts of business opportunities that we really wanted to leverage. So we took a lot of looking at that area. Public life and livability, that sort of went beyond let's go cross-country skiing or let's go outside and play. We really wanted that to happen, and we had recommendations around cross-country ski trails and better grooming and right of ways and those kinds of things. But we really wanted to focus on what some of you talked about, and that's how do we make our winter cities livable? What do we need to do for snow removal? What do we need to do to make our seniors feel safe and comfortable walking around in winters? What do we do for arts and festivals? So that was a very big area that we focused on. And the last hub was city branding and marketing. How do we sell this? And we were struck by when we were doing this work, we often get so worried that people are going to come, in our case, to Edmonton and hate it because it's going to be cold and miserable. And we had a delegation from Spain come and meet with Economic Development and Tourism, and they no sooner got there than there was a major snowfall, and all the roads were shut, and the buses were down, and all of this problem happened. And Economic Development thought, oh my God, this is our worst nightmare. And what do you think the Spanish delegation thought? This is a dream come true. Because it's all about perception. They were so excited. And we found them coats and we found them boots, and they were out walking, and they had stories to tell that were very different than the stories we tell about our own winter. So that was a real eye-opener. Overarching all of these hubs, we asked people to look at, no matter if they were looking at urban design, if they were looking at livability, business, how do we make use of snow, ice, and light? How do we make snow an asset? How do we make ice beautiful? How do we use the darkness to capture light? And I think some of you talked about beautiful creative lighting. We talked about diverse populations, so making sure that this strategy, no matter what they looked at, dealt with the business person, dealt with the transit taker, what do you call, Jeff, your transit passengers? Transit tookers? Customers, okay, transit customers. How about our seniors? How about our most vulnerable? How about youth that are making decisions on where to spend their lives? How do we include them? And how do we continually engage people? And so all of those hubs had to take those elements into account. So we discovered some recurring themes as we went on, and it was really interesting. We had a sort of a grand opening of this launch, and over 200 people came to City Hall. And that was one of the coldest days. It was -30, and we thought no one would come, but everyone came, and it was full. But it was really driven by the people. And a completely different 200 people came to City Hall the next day to answer questions about what should be our themes, what should we focus on. And so here's some of the recurring themes that came out. The guiding principles, it had to be authentic. People were really worried that the Winter City strategy may be focusing externally. How do we sell Edmonton in winter to others? And basically what they said was, let's sell it at home first. Let's make it authentic to us. Let's learn from Quebec City and Ottawa and all of those other places that have wonderful winter cities, but it's got to be true to us. So that was the #1 thing we had to keep in mind.
And based on our local context.
And our local context.
Keeping in mind our assets, our natural environment, the sunshine we get, things like that.
At the River Valley.
And our heritage, taking all that into account. We want it built from the ground up based on our local assets.
Yeah, very much so. The other one, I think, is what you talked about, attitude changing. We need to flip people's perceptions. We need to really, some of the posters along here talk about it, we really need to flip attitudes around, you know, in our case at Edmonton, we're the largest northernmost city on the continent. You know, someone said, how can you not rock that? So how can we make that happen? And it goes so far as to talking to the meteorologists about how they describe winter. So if the meteorologists are going to say, oh man, this is going to be hell out there, just batten down the hatches, and we had a good conversation with them about that, and are getting them in Edmonton anyways to change how they introduce the weather, and the people in the media that hand off the stories, the anchors, to change how they're talking about it. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, one of the things we learned is that the meteorologists are pretty much already converted. They're already very positive about winter. It's the throws they get from the other anchors that make it difficult for them.
Yeah, and so those kind of public areas are things. And what are the messages we're telling our children? Many people, their fondest childhood memory was from winter. And so how do we capture that magic of the first snowfall in all of us? So that was another guiding principle.
And in terms of attitude changing, we wanted to challenge existing stereotypes of winter as being cold, dull, and dangerous. They can be cold, but not as cold as we tend to think it is. It's definitely not dull if you get out and find, you know, all the activity. And it's not dangerous, except for a very small segment of the population that's vulnerable. For everybody else, that's not true. And we wanted to challenge that in fun ways.
Yeah, very much so. And the last principle that they asked us to look at was to make sure that it was sustainable, to make sure that everything we did could be carried on over time, that the strategy was sustainable, but also that we were being responsible environmentally to do that.
And also sustainable in terms of being inclusive, you know, speaking to the diverse populations. Because if it was inclusive, if people could see themselves somehow reflected in the initiative, then it would endure over time. So we were really mindful of that, and that's also what we meant by sustainable.
And the one thing that we really learned was it can be done. And we were talking with Jan Gull and some of the architects that came over to help us with the winter strategy. Fortunately, they were in town on another project, and so we just grabbed them. And they said when they were doing their winter strategies in the famous winter cities, you know, Copenhagen and Helsinki and those places, everyone there said, it can't be done. It will never be done. We're not going to be able to do it. And sure enough, it can be done. So every city says it can't be done. So we thought we're going to hear that, but we're still going to go ahead. So those are the themes that sustained us and led us to the strategy. And Sue's going to just take over now.
So how do we sell loving winter? And these are the three main ways that we thought we'd share with you. Busting myths, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there, and we have a little video we'll show you about that. Focusing on everyday life, because I think, in particular in Edmonton, we do winter festivals really, really well. We have some fantastic ones. Winter festival season's really vibrant, but we need to do a better job of everyday life experiences. And last, applying a winter lens to everything we do, and that's especially applicable to the planning and design work that you're all involved in.
As John mentioned, EEDC has a focus on being the kind of place where we can leverage our quality of life so people want to live here and people want to move here to live. But we have a problem here in Edmonton. But I don't think winter is our problem. I think our perspectives on winter are. We talk like winter lasts 6 months long, and I heard two people say that this morning. We complain that we go to work and it's dark and we come home and it's dark. It's pretty nice right now. And we also believe in our brains that it's minus 40. When we say winter, it's minus 40 every day of winter. But none of that is really true. So some facts about our problem. If you think about the number of days in the year on average, and this is based on a 10-year history, we average in a winter about 4 days that are colder than minus 30. So we've already had a couple of them. We average about 3 days that are warmer than plus 30. So about the same. But if we think about looking at minus 20 versus plus 20, we have way more warm days than cold, and it's even a more rosy picture if you look at days that are plus 10 to minus 10. So in our brain, when we think winter is minus 40 for a very long time, we have a vivid imagination. So when we talk about being a great winter city, I'm not sure that it's a believable statement for our greater Edmonton community. I think we have some work still to do to help have people understand that the winter season is great, and to find more ways for more people to actively enjoy winter, and I think we need to do a better job promoting it. So finally, to wrap it up and connect the dots, we know Edmonton needs to be globally competitive. We know we need to be able to attract and retain talented people. We know that quality of life is a critical part of where people choose to live. And for us here in Edmonton, winter is part of our quality of life, and I would suggest an undervalued part of that. So for the future health of our economy and our community, we need to leverage the quality of life that we have here year-round. As the city experiences winter, we need to embrace what we have, and we need to fix what needs improvement. And we need to enjoy winter locally so we can market it abroad. So this symposium is a fabulous launching point, and the rest is up to us.
And this is a video by Lars Gemzoe, and he works with Gell Architects, and he's one of the ones that we were able to benefit from his presence in Edmonton. He was in town working on the Civic Precinct Master Plan.
Thank you very much for inviting me to talk a little bit about, which is about daily life kind of things. I think you're absolutely great at making events here. You have a great reputation for that. And I was looking forward to winter. I was here in December, a very short visit, and it was not really winter enough. I thought, what is this? I heard you had really severe winters. We don't have that low temperatures. We have high humidity, blasting winds, and we can get really miserable things in the winter. So I was looking for the day that you had yesterday and I think today. And I'll be happy getting around, and I've got the icons of what you need here for good outdoor life in the city. So I'll talk a little bit about city stuff, and I'll talk about some of the experience from where I come from in Copenhagen, and a lot of the pictures I show here would show things that was not there when I was young. So it's all about change and transformation, and you're in a change and transformation situation, and the Winter City themes here is definitely something about that. Outdoor cafe and outdoor sitting, both in public spaces and just at the cafes, we came to love that. After traveling south and finding out that the Italians can do that, we thought it's nice to have it even further up north. We got to love it, and we couldn't get enough of it. And very quickly, cafes found out that a little blanket can help, and you can extend into the cooler summer evenings, and it's good enough for extending into earlier spring and fall. And now a blanket is a Copenhagen standard for any sort of cafe. You'll have that. And it's also a signal that you can get there. Oh, it's good. You can sit there. It's fine. And you can extend it further into the colder parts of the season and enjoy the kind of warm tea or whatever, like these girls there. Also, some of the cafes and restaurants and some of the squares have started to keep the stuff out all year round. So this little square here is a great little gathering place in the summer, but it's now totally open also in the winter. It's not so sustainable with the electric heaters here. I prefer the kind of blankets, definitely, as an idea, but the whole thing is that it has changed the way we think about it. So gradually now you will not think about that it's only in the summer that you can go. First of all, the cafes were not outdoors even in the summer in the old days. I mean, there's very few. But now it's something that we like to have everywhere. It also gathers people sitting on the public benches and all these other places because there's people around, there's more people doing these things. We cannot have enough of it, so why not have this kind of beach situation? We have places with sand also in the city center in the summer, but it's also that this kind of beach furniture suddenly invades the city, so you can have a lean-back situation, and again with blankets, you can survive a little bit. We've also been working over the years to have better and better conditions for people on foot walking, and when you start having those things, it works really great in the summer. You have more people walking in the summer and that we have in the winter. But on the rainy days, you know, if you're in town, you still go there. The H&M shop sells a few more umbrellas, but you would be there regardless to the climate. Everybody talks about, oh, no, you cannot do this and you cannot do that because of our poor climate. It's raining all the time, and then you have the gray winters and the snow. You cannot do it. It's the same story wherever I go. We promenade and have a great time in the winter as well. It's like you get the habit, so even at heavy snowfall and bad situation like this here, before they can start clearing the snow because it's pouring down constantly, we continue doing what we used to do because that's the habit we've got into. So it's sort of change of culture, you can say.